Hello, everyone. It's so good to see you all and to be with all of you on a Sunday morning. Thank you for taking the time to join us here. I am here with Dr. Heather Oxford. She's an amazing, amazing veterinarian, and she blew away my mind, or blew my mind away, however, when I heard her speak at the AHVMA conference last year. It was a very inspiring and very mind-blowing and uh, yeah, like lectures that you did, and most of it, I have to say, I didn't all understand it. I mean, I just knew that it was important, and I will need to go dig in some more because it's a complex subject of anti-aging in pets. So, if you wanted
Well,
to
thank
tell
you.
people a little bit, who you are and what you do and how you got there, to go into anti-aging medicine or research or understanding for humans and pets.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Odette. This is awesome. I'm so excited to be here and be sharing this with you. Um, and my goal is to make this like very understandable so that we can really apply the information that we've learned into our own lives and into the lives of our pets. That's like the major goal. But I am a rehab and acupuncture vet. I live in Los Angeles. I do exclusively mobile services. So I go to homes and I treat pets, mostly dogs, in the comfort of their own home. So I do acupuncture and I do laser therapy and, everything with rehab. So and I've been doing that since 2008. I got into acupuncture and rehab. And then in 2013, I went mobile. And then in 2019, I was actually at a client's house, and she came running out to my car and met me one day and said, Dr. Oxford, have you heard about NAD? And like, I was like taken back to like my biochemistry days and like vet school. I'm like, NAD, oh my gosh, is she about to quiz me on the Krebs cycle? I was like, oh no.
Yeah, that's still a nightmare, recurrent nightmare.
Right? Yeah, exactly. And I was like, yeah, I've heard of NAD. And she was like, well, my doctor has me on it. It's anti-aging. I was like, and she just, was so excited to share this.
Mm.
And so through her, I actually was able to meet David Sinclair, who is a world-renowned geneticist and researcher at Harvard. And he's, kind of at the forefront of this, of all the anti-aging research. And so I was able to meet him and then, got introduced to one of his companies that's designed a product for dogs for anti-aging, which we're going to talk about today. And so through that work, I have just become kind of obsessed with this science. So yeah, so this is how I got here. And yeah, it's been a wild ride. There is so much trying to gather all the information about anti-aging science as it comes out is kind of like trying to drink from a fire hose. It's just
That's a
daily.
good
It's just,
comparison.
yeah, seriously. I mean, I've never seen anything like it, like how much research is coming out so quickly these days.
Yeah, I think that's true in a lot of different subjects. I mean, with the microbiome research, it's the same thing. It's like
Yes.
we have so much more ability to do research, and so now we're being flooded with information. And
Yeah.
mentioned that poster or that board that you have back there. That kind of looks a little bit like when I was studying biochemistry, like in vet school. I
Yes.
started to draw everything and such, so that kind of reminds me of that.
Yeah, yeah. As I was preparing for all my presentations, I would jot things up here. So this is my mad scientist board that helps me keep everything straight.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, very well. So anyways, you guys are in for a treat today. This is like top advanced, research that you're going to hear about. And also learn how to apply this to your animals. So we're going to go a little bit complicated probably at first, and then we'll bring it back together so that it becomes easier, because I do want to take that up front, because we can get lost in the woods and just look at one tree and forget that there are a whole lot of other trees that also connect to that one tree to make a forest. So I want to make sure that you don't get lost in the trees, and just kind of take in that information without going into like panic mode, like, oh, I gotta grab onto that tree and that tree and that tree, right?
Right.
We'll bring it back to kind of make it applicable, because in the end, that's what matters the most, is how do we apply what we know? Because
absolutely
comes from action, from taking action, and not just from accumulating knowledge. So this is going to give you knowledge, but then also tips and tricks to apply it. So take it away. I know you have slides.
Okay. Yep. We've got some slides. Hopefully this will share.
Yep, it looks like it's working.
Okay, you're seeing? Okay. All right, great. Okay, so the aging problem, and we are striving towards some solutions. So I don't, when I talk to people about anti-aging, sometimes the feedback that I get is like, well, how much longer do we really need to live? Or how much longer do we like want our pets to live? Because, when I'm 95, I don't want to be like living debilitated for years, right? So the real goal that I want everybody to understand with anti-aging science and applied longevity medicine is not to maximize lifespan per se, but it's really for medical purposes, it's to expand our health span. And the main reason that there's been so much drive into this research is that the world leaders have really acknowledged that we're facing a crisis here. I mean, we've got our lifespan is extending, and the proportion of people who are 70 or older is increasing disproportionately to the rate that people are being born. And so this is creating a major issue that, by the year 2100, there's going to be over 2 billion people on the planet that are in this cohort of age, over 80% of the globe. And so it's going to be this a big financial burden for healthcare if we don't improve the health of this aging population. And also, we're worried that there might not even be enough people for the care to take care of this sector of the population.
Yeah, that kind of means that we'll probably never be able to retire, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Just saying,
exactly. Right. Yeah. So I mean, so the goal is to expand how long we are healthy, and maybe push back that retirement age so that we are healthier and able to care for others longer. And so what is health span? So this is a term you're probably hearing a lot in the media these days. So if you're looking at this slide here, we've got life expectancy of 73 years, but the health life expectancy is about 64 years. So there's this extra 9-year gap, which is the health span lifespan gap, where we're spending this time with some form of disability or chronic disease, which is not good. It's not, that's not what any of us strive for. So health span is the number of years lived free from chronic disease or disability. So, I mean, just to put this into...
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but as I was watching your video or your lectures earlier this morning to kind of catch up, I'm like, can that really be true? Because when I look around, it seems like everybody has chronic diseases, and they're not 64. They're much younger than that. So I'm thinking that, I mean, is that really accurate? Because even with our animals, we see chronic diseases starting at like 3 months of age, when they start with chronic be down that path. So it's like,
Yeah, yeah.
I think
I
that's
mean, you're right.
exaggerated.
In a lot of cases, that like chronic disease does start even younger. Yeah. hmm But this is World Health Organization info. I mean, it's accurate for the US.
Hmm.
And I don't know I don't know, like, the rest of, other countries' data exactly, but yeah, it is. And, when you put this into perspective for like dogs, you know, we're looking at, this gap as 12.5% of our lifespan, right? That we are going to spend with some form of disability.
Hmm.
And in dogs, that would equate to 1 to 2 years of their life.
Hmm.
So, and exactly like you're saying, a lot of dogs these days and cats, they're spending a lot longer of their lifespan living with some kind of, morbidity. So
Right.
some kind of chronic disease. So yes, it's a big problem. And, a lot of this research is trying to figure out how we shorten that period of time, the time spent with disease.
Hmm.
So one of the companies, this comes from Loyal. It's a company that is trying to do some, longevity, like applied longevity medicine, and trying to develop some drugs for dogs. This is, kind of what we're trying to do is, instead of this longer sort of, seesaw-like slope, we're trying to extend the health span out so that we get good health lasting longer into their lifespan. And then there comes a time where their quality of life just suddenly declines abruptly. So it's compressing that time that they have to, live with chronic disease. So it's extending health span, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. Yeah, and so dogs are actually turning out to be the best species that researchers can look at for researching health span and lifespan extension, because they, unfortunately, they age much faster than we do. It's a real bummer. They have low genetic diversity, so this just means each breed has pretty similar genetics. So that's not, confusing things. And then we share a lot of the same lifestyle factors. Like, a lot of times we're actually eating similar things. We're
Poop.
having the same, what's that?
Poop.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe not that, but I mean, we are, we're like exercising similarly, especially those of us with dogs. A lot of times when the dog's exercising, we're exercising and vice versa. And, we're not exercising and the dog's not exercising. So, and then another big factor is that we have very similar, standards of healthcare that dogs and cats do, but dogs especially. And also the same top chronic diseases, these are non-infectious diseases that affect humans, are the same ones that are affecting dogs. So these are going to be cancer, cardiovascular, endocrine, and then musculoskeletal and neurological. So the big question is it nature or nurture that controls our aging? So that's basically in anti-aging research terms, is it genetic or epigenetic controls of aging? So it's actually not the type of car, but how it's driven that determines its lifespan. So it's not necessarily your genes. This is like the hardware. It's only responsible for 30% of your lifespan and aging. Epigenetics, or like the software, is responsible for 70% of it. So this opens up a door to a lot of interventions that we can do to help slow it down.
And is that the
and even
same for
reverse it.
dogs? Sorry, is that for dogs
Mhm.
and humans? Is that the same? Because I know
Yes.
with dogs,
Mhm.
there's more inbreeding and line breeding and such going on. So,
Yes. Yes, there is. Yeah, there's more. There's, yeah. there's definitely more epigenetic control because there is less genetic variability with dogs because of how we've controlled their genetics. Yes. So we may even have a bigger impact on their aging with lifestyle and some maybe pharmaceutical interventions. We're going to get into those today. So this is like the heavy science of it. So we're going to stay on path, and we're not going to get bogged down. But starting at the bottom of this pyramid, these are the basic primary drivers of aging, these bottom 5. And then as we move up the pyramid, these are drivers that kind of the body's natural mechanisms to stay healthy that kind of get turned against us as we age. And then these upper ones are basically the culmination of everything below them. And you'll be happy to know, Odette, dysbiosis is sitting right at the top of that. I know that is your favorite.
Well, I mean, it's all part of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're all really linked. This is like a spider web. They're all linked up. Yeah. Okay. So for Game of Thrones fans out there, I've got a picture of Jon Snow. Okay. So we can think about Jon Snow as like our body's mechanisms to repair DNA. And then this army coming against him. These are all of the stressors that are hitting our genes and trying to damage them. So eventually we are incurring so much like UV radiation and chemicals and different toxins that are damaging our DNA. And eventually the rate of damage outpaces the ability of, Jon Snow to defend it, or our body to repair the DNA. Telomere attrition. This one it's out in the news a lot, I feel like. And this is the shortening of the ends of the chromosomes. And so there's an accumulation of this DNA damage, right, that's happening on a daily basis, and it eventually shortens the ends of our chromosomes, our telomeres. And this happens for 2 reasons. Most of our cells don't have the machinery to replace those ends. And number 2 is the damage that occurs to these ends are literally invisible to our cell repair machinery. So these things are just getting lost, and that can unfortunately speed up aging, and it triggers our cells to go to sleep, which is a term called senescence, which we're going to get into a little bit later. A third hallmark is epigenetic alterations. And this is basically, unwrapping of genes. So as we age, some of our genes get opened up. So they were previously dormant, but now they're getting turned on. And so an example of these kinds of genes would be like cancer genes that get turned on with age. And then unfortunately, what goes along with that is wrapping of other genes. And that means active genes get turned off. So these would be like our cancer suppressor genes. So the good genes are getting turned off, the bad genes are getting turned on with age. Another thing is loss of proteostasis, which is just a fancy term of maintaining our proteins. And so stressors from day to day, that UV damage and whatnot, that causes unfolding of proteins. And so our body can fight this in 2 ways. We've got mechanisms to refold the proteins, and CoQ10 comes into play here. CoQ10 is a great supplement that we could all be doing. And then another way is that we degrade the unfolded proteins. But again, sometimes these mechanisms get overwhelmed with the level of damage that we're seeing. And so these unfolded or damaged proteins accumulate and result in toxic effects. And so diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, cataracts, ALS, they're all products of this part of aging. And it's also important to remember that as we sit here our bodies are experiencing all of these hallmarks, unfortunately. After we're about, humans are about 20 to 30 years old, we're all experiencing these things. Our dogs and cats, once they've, probably at about like a third of their normal lifespan, like they're experiencing these things. Another hallmark is disabled macroautophagy. This is a scientific term for cellular repair and cleaning out, taking out the trash. So epigenetic alterations, which we just learned about, the wrapping and unwrapping of genes, that leads to some of those good genes getting turned off, or the autophagy genes. And so then without the cellular repair genes, we don't have as many of the garbage truck type of organelles cleaning things out, cleaning out the cellular trash. So we've got an accumulation of trash. And this leads the innate immune system, which is kind of like the first responder arm of our immune system, to become chronically activated, which leads to inflammation. So this diseases that occur are going to be cardiovascular, infectious, and neurodegenerative disorders. But, intermittent fasting and deep sleep and exercise are great lifestyle interventions that help with this part of aging. We'll talk about that in a minute too. And then probably one of the best researched hallmarks of aging are going to be deregulated nutrient sensing. And this is really important with one of the products that's coming out, or that's in clinical trials for dogs. So this deregulated nutrient sensing sounds really confusing, but basically it's as we're growing, like for us as children or our puppies, we have a growth hormone axis, basically a growth pathway. So growth hormone gets produced, it then signals a growth factor, and that's how we have a lot of cellular growth, and we're reaching skeletal maturity. But after we've reached skeletal maturity, our body's natural mechanism is to shift this pathway down so that it slows down. This minimizes the potential for cellular damage, actually. So that's how it's helpful for us. And it also helps our body to shift into cellular repair. So, but as our natural tendencies, and sometimes what we do to our dogs and cats too, is to overeat and to overfeed. And so we have way more glucose and amino acids or proteins than we actually need. And because this pathway has been downshifted, we don't have the same sensors. Like we don't have, the same mechanism to sense these nutrients that we did when we were growing. And so what happens is we develop obesity, and this actually triggers faster aging. And so in dogs, this IGF-1 gene, there's a variant. There's kind of like it's kind of like a mutant form of this gene that increases the growth pathway. It increases the growth rate of large and giant breed dogs. And this variant is supposed to account for about half of all the differences we see in the size across dog breeds. And it's thought to be responsible for the faster aging and shorter lifespan that large and giant breeds have compared to small breeds. Mm-hmm. So this is one of the products that Loyal is developing. It's trying to block this gene variant, but we'll get into that in a little bit later. But that's why this hallmark of aging is kind of key for our dogs, especially. Another one is mitochondrial dysfunction. I think a lot of people know that mitochondria are kind of like the powerhouse of the cell, producing all of our energy and oxygen and water for our cell. But with that genomic instability that we talked about in the beginning, like genetic mutations happening, the loss of proteostasis, that laundry stacking up unfolded proteins, and the garbage stacking up, the disabled macroautophagy. We get defective quality control of our mitochondria, and so they become dysfunctional. They start to get leaky. And so the things that inside them start leaking out, spilling out into our cells, and this actually triggers a lot of inflammation and actually cell death, which contribute to aging. And this is one of the key factors in COVID-19 being so significant in especially people over 60. One of the, a couple interventions that we have to target our mitochondria and make them healthier would be endurance training and also fasting, which we'll talk about how to do those. Cellular senescence. So there's a lot in the media right now about zombie cells. So this zombie cells are forming because of an accumulation of cellular senescence. So senescence just means like the cells have gone to sleep. And so this means some of our cells that have gone to sleep, they stop dividing, they stop being sort of like productive members of society. They start
wake up.
I mean, right? I will say the one thing that they're known to help with, the senescent cells are known to help with wound repair. So they do serve a function when we need them, but this is like an overaccumulation of them that becomes unhealthy for us. So, so normally these sleeping cells will eventually get cleaned out by the immune system, but because we have less autophagy happening, these senescent cells are building up. And then when they accumulate, they become zombie cells, which means they start producing inflammatory compounds that actually infect their neighboring cells. So their neighboring cells can be healthy. Once they start like spewing out these toxic compounds, the neighboring cells become zombie cells as well. So they are, it is literally like a horror movie happening in our body. And so these zombie cells cause aging and chronic disease, including cancer. Okay, and this stem cell exhaustion always, it just reminds me of like parenting. It's out there, it's like you're just exhausted because you're on all the time. So it's, cellular damage is happening, and these stem cells are like the parent cells that are responsible for producing baby cells, right, to help replenish the body. So there's damage happening, there's excessive strain on our stem cells to produce more cells. You have a lower population of functional stem cells occurring, and then you've got decreased tissue renewal and repair that occurs as a result. So this happens in a lot. It's like all of our cell lines are affected by this. So we, are resulting with like anemias and bone marrow issues, osteoporosis, decreased bone mineral density, and then less fracture repair. We've got less repair of muscle fibers, less intestinal function. And with this decreased blood production, we've actually got decreased production of B and T cells, which are kind of like the second arm or the adaptive immune system. And so this creates a term called immunosenescence, which means our immune system has kind of gone to sleep on us. And so this results in lack of oversight. We can't clear out foreign invaders as well.
It's a little depressing.
It is. It is. I know. Until we turn it around and figure out all the interventions.
Exactly. Yeah. So let's turn that horror movie into something else down the road. But I know you have a few more of the.
Yeah, we're almost ready to turn it positive, Odette.
Good.
Yep. Just hang in there.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got altered intercellular communication. This is essentially like a relay team between our cells is dropping the baton. Like our cells can't communicate. And so we have like neurohormonal signaling that gets jumbled up with age. And so this compromises our health. We've also got that bystander effect of zombie cells invading others, contagiously aging other cells. This happens from tissue to tissue, organ to organ, actually. And then inflammaging, which is, this aging result that happens in our, basically in our immune system. The first responders are increased and our second responders are decreased. And so we've got this mismatch happening that causes a lot of chronic inflammation. And chronic inflammation is basically the culmination of everything that we've already talked about. So we all know about inflammation, and we all know that it can be really, really bad. And it is what's underlying most chronic diseases. So neuroinflammatory, inflammatory bowel disease, osteoarthritis, intervertebral disc degeneration. So a lot of things that we as vets deal with on a day-to-day basis in our pets. And, as humans as well, we deal with this ourselves. Mm-hmm. And this is for you, the golden poo. So dysbiosis, that top of our pyramid. So dysbiosis, just, aging related decline of, the biodiversity in our guts. And so this causes a decline in our immune system. And, we have like neurologic disease and inflammation occurring because of this. So, and there are a lot of interventions that we can have at the level of our gut, pre, pro, postbiotics, and then plant-based diets, which apply a little bit more to humans than to our pets, and then caloric restriction. So we'll get into those. Okay, so we can just think of these hallmarks of aging as targets for intervention. And our interventions are going to be environmental and lifestyle interventions, and then we can move into pharmaceutical and nutraceutical, or basically supplements interventions. Okay, so the environmental factors that positively impact these hallmarks of aging are going to be diet, exercise, circadian clock, getting some sleep, temperature regulation, and sex hormones. Okay, so number one factor that affects aging is the diet. So, and this is, there are many different factors with diet. So I break it into like quality and quantity. So quality foods, we want quality over crap foods. So crap is this acronym for calorically dense, refined, and processed foods. Okay, so as you can
kind of works with that abbreviation, huh?
I love it.
I do too.
Yeah.
So now crap is not really like a bad word anymore. It's like an actual, scientifically.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. We all need to stop eating crap. Yeah. But our dogs can still eat crap. Yeah. So yeah, quality foods, whole foods, they're going to be nutrient dense compared to calorically dense crap foods. Less salt and sugar, higher fiber, and then also crap foods are going to contain a lot of fillers, preservatives, other chemicals known to be carcinogenic, and they have been associated with morbidity and mortality in human studies. So this applies to animals too. We're all mammals. I think we're all going to respond to crap diets the same way. And just one meta-analysis that I looked at 43 studies in humans, looking at ultra-processed food exposure, and 37 out of 43 of those was associated with at least one adverse health outcome for humans. And there weren't any positive health outcomes with exposure to ultra-processed foods.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. So I think it's just important that we just look at what we're feeding our pets. Look at those food labels. It's critical. We don't want to be feeding our pets crap food. So looking at micro and macronutrients, Obviously, we want antioxidants that helps for cognitive protection as we age. We want fatty acids that actually benefits that proteostasis hallmark of aging. Fiber definitely helps with microbiome balance. And what we don't want is digestible carbohydrate rich diets. And this is going to be our, most of our processed foods that are on the market for ourselves and for pets. And so the reason we don't want these is that they have a very high glycemic load, meaning when we eat them, we experience a sugar spike, and this is inflammatory, and this contributes to metabolic dysfunction and microbiome imbalance. We also want a robust diet. We want some variety of a balanced diet. This benefits our microbiome. So it's just that healthy balance of protozoa, viruses, and fungi and bacteria that are interfacing between the food and our GI tract. So we want those guys as healthy as possible. And this contributes to metabolic maintenance, and it's anti-inflammatory. It helps our immune system, and it helps, neuromodulatory effects as well, which impact behavior and cognition and mood. So the other part of the of diet is quantity. So less is more. Food is not love. And so we have two ways to affect quantity. And this costs nothing. I mean, quality costs something, to improve the quality of our diet. But quantity actually costs less. So you can calorically restrict, and this consists of, cutting back about 25% of the calories compared to a free-fed situation. So this helps with weight loss, and it prevents that deregulated nutrient sensing part of aging.
So before you move on to intermittent fasting there, can you just, because if we have a dog that is fed a normal amount of food and twice a day, let's just say, reducing that amount of food or the calories of that food by 25%, that would be way too much, right? So can you maybe clarify that a little bit, because I don't want anybody out there now go and cut their food by a quarter, because then they can get into starvation mode.
Right. So when we feed our dogs like twice a day, we're already cutting back a little bit compared to what truly free fed would be. So free fed would just be like having food out, and the dog is able to eat whatever they want all throughout the day, which is probably going to be a lot more than the dog actually needs. And so basically for so if we were looking at a really healthy, active dog, they're going to be burning a lot of calories. You're not going to be able to cut them 25%. That's going to be unhealthy. But for a very sedentary dog who's able to just eat whatever they want all day long, they might be eating 2,000 calories a day, especially on these ultra processed foods, because they are very calorically dense. So what this means is just basically we can calculate better, and this might require the vet's help too, but calculate better a way to calorically reduce in a healthy way for the pet. But I actually don't like the caloric restriction model for helping with aging, because it doesn't feel good. And I'm all about quality of life. And so I lean more towards the intermittent fasting side of cutting back on quantity to help, because you're not calorically restricting. I mean, you're not feeding a free fed amount of calories. You would be feeding the calculated number of calories that your pet needs for its metabolic needs, but you're limiting it to a 6 to 10 hour window. So within every 24-hour cycle. So this is a better way, because they're getting the nourishment that they need, but they're cutting it into a window so that in like outside of that window, the whole time that they're not eating, this is improving autophagy and it's improving mitochondrial function. So, and it doesn't feel as bad for me too. I would hate to be calorically restricted every day of my life. Intermittent fasting, once you get used to it, it's no big deal. Like I feel like it's pretty easy to do. But I was just going to say, there was one big study for caloric restriction. There was a 20-year, like it was a study that spanned like 2 decades. It was a lifetime study in Labrador retrievers. And they had 48 litter mates that were matched by gender and weight. And they paired control feeding versus 25% calorically restricted. So control feeding here means like free fed. And then they were fed the same food, but the calorically restricted dogs experienced 1.8 years longer lifespan. And they had delayed onset of aging related diseases, like including osteoarthritis, compared to their control litter mates. So this is pretty profound. I mean, they had a 1.8 year longer survival time than their litter mates. And the only thing that was different was that they were calorically restricted.
Yeah, so they have a
and then
health span as well, which that's really what we're looking for. We want them to be healthy.
Exactly.
And compared to humans, that would be what, like living 10 years longer or something like that?
Yeah, 10 to 12 years. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so that's quite amazing, you know. I mean, that's a big difference, you know. Either you make it to 70 or you make it to 80. That's a big difference.
But the thing with you know, and for a dog, it might not apply as much for dysbiosis, but for humans, there are studies now that are looking at caloric restriction may be impairing our microbiome a little bit. Because you're not getting if you're restricting yourself by 25%, you're probably not having like as much variety in your diet as you could be. So it might not be as good for us to do a caloric restricted plan as it is for intermittent fasting. And then there was also just like racing greyhounds didn't have the 25% caloric restriction, but they did have mild caloric restriction, and it actually increased their racing speed. So that's another fun fact about caloric restriction. But fasting, we know from the Dog Aging Project, they found that once daily feeding resulted in improved preservation of cognitive function. And this is among a database of greater than 10,000 dogs.
Wow.
So yeah, that's big data. So once daily feeding, they also found, was associated with a reduced risk of gastrointestinal, dental, orthopedic, renal and urinary, hepatic, which is liver, and pancreatic health conditions among over 24,000 dogs. So definitely improving that health span with intermittent fasting. Now, this is going to be hard to do. I'll just say the one caveat is we can't do this in young active dogs, right? Because it's hard to get all of their caloric needs met in one meal. But where this would have the biggest impact and be the easiest to do would be those dogs that are at least middle-aged or older. We could do this.
So when would you start a younger dog, you know, and switching them to a once a day sort of feeding? I mean, I've usually gone by like about a year of age. So, I mean, I guess it probably would depend on their activity level and everything else as well.
Yeah, I think it depends on, you know, like their activity level for sure. And that's, you know, a lot of breeds tend to be more sedentary than other breeds. Like if you have a herding breed, like this border collie, like I think that dog it's going to be hard to meet the caloric needs in once daily feeding until they're probably significantly older. You know, so I would say probably, you know, rough estimate would be like at about half of their expected lifespan, you could start looking at like the once daily feeding.
But there are also a lot of dogs, especially younger dogs too, who will kind of do that on their own already, where they just don't eat some days, and so they're
Yeah.
already kind of doing
That's true. Yeah. And I also see that, you know, one of the aging signs, and you probably see this too, something that kind of, it kind of is a pattern with a lot of aging pets, is that they start like not eating breakfast very well. And they're
that.
just sort of eating, like they'll eat like afternoon or evening instead. They kind of shift their cycle. And I think that's related to their circadian rhythm that we can have a positive effect on.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, I do see that.
So exercise, this is, I think it's, so in my opinion, I think this is number two, most important environmental factor for reducing the speed of aging. And so we know that this is going to, if we maintain exercise, we're going to improve our mobility and maintain our strength. And this is going to have impact on frailty as we age. So we should you know, slow down the rate of our development of frailty if we maintain our exercise. And so the exercise, and this is also very helpful for mitochondrial health. So for dogs and for us, there are two forms of exercise that we want to be mindful of, that we want to try to do on a regular basis. So one is endurance or aerobic exercise, and two would be strength training. And so there's various ways that we can do this. You know, walking 25 minutes, 5 days a week, good for us, good for our dogs. Trotting or jogging 20 minutes, 3 days a week, or swimming 10 minutes continuously, 3 days a week. Walking up to 2 hours per day. It's interesting. I read that in Germany, they passed a law that dog owners have to walk their dogs 2 hours a day or they get fined. So I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, that sounds
But
incredible. I mean, I think it probably
I
would be
kind of
good.
love it.
Yeah, maybe they're trying to get people to move more because they're realizing it's probably like an insurance company that came up with that.
Yeah, you're probably right.
I mean,
That's
like a
probably right.
human health insurance company, because they're like, we got you moving and then we have to pay out less.
Right? That's probably it. I don't think it would ever fly in the States. I don't know.
Yeah,
Unfortunately.
no, probably not.
Right? Or this safari that Dr. Karen Becker talks about, like a 10-minute walk just to sniff in the morning and the PM. So those are ways that we can do some, you know, endurance and aerobic exercise for our dogs. And then strength training is basically stabilization exercises and strengthening for those type 2 muscle fibers. It's so, and the condition of the pet definitely determines the intensity and frequency that we're going to be able to strength train. But these are just some examples of be like moving or pulling over short distances. So like, you know, tug of war would be something good that could apply here. Running free if you've got some access to like some wild terrain. Retrieving and jumping games are going to be strengthening, and just like dog to dog play and wrestling, that's strengthening. And sprinting at least once per day. So just ways that we can maintain our muscle strength.
Yeah,
But
just
the other,
you know, on
yeah,
exercise, I just want to mention, because I live in a cold area, you know, in the Chicago area, and people kind of put their animals and themselves on a winter break. There is no such
yeah,
thing as a winter break for exercise. And, you know, I grew up in Switzerland and I had to walk my dog, you know, 365 or 366 days a year. So there is no such thing as a winter
yeah,
break. You need to
right,
exercise no matter what. Obviously, if it's
yeah,
a God knows what freezing level where they would get bit, you know, cold blisters and things like that. Obviously, you have to switch to exercising indoors and do something, but they have to exercise, you know, every day. There's no,
yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah. And another thing that touches on is exposure to cold, which is beneficial. So we'll talk about that in a second too.
Right.
But you know, the other benefit of exercise for us and for our dogs is cognitive protection of our cognitive function, and it prevents cognitive decline. So in dogs, interactions with dog housemates and lifelong training exercises, it is shown to maintain cognition into old age in our dogs. Dog Aging Project, also with their huge data set, they were able to show that dogs with the least amount of physical activity had the worst baseline severity of cognitive dysfunction and symptom worsening over a 6-month interval that they looked at. And they progressed to have an outcome of, canine cognitive dysfunction, which is kind of like our dementia. So, definitely physical activity is positively related to cognitive function. And they were looking at over 11,000 dogs that were between the ages of 6 and 18.
Yeah, what I've noticed in my practice is that when dogs start to lose their rear end and they can't get up anymore, their cognitive functioning goes down the hill like at warp speed. I mean, within a month or two, their cognitive function is gone. I mean, just very fast.
Yeah. So, mobility and, maintaining that mobility and then exercising and maintaining your strength is so important, for slowing down aging and slowing down cognitive decline. So number 3, like getting sleep. So deep sleep, we know, triggers macroautophagy. So cleans out that trash, decreases our inflammation. But the circadian clock, or that rhythm we stay on, it regulates the rhythm of gene and protein expression. So this maintains all of the normal functions in our body. And this is really key to our health span. So in lab animals, we know from various studies that disruption of that circadian rhythm decreases their longevity. And cognitive decline actually contributes to a sleep-wake cycle dysregulation. In people, there's a syndrome called sundowners, where you sleep all day and then you have nighttime dysphoria or agitation. And we see this in some of our aging animals as well. And what this does, medically speaking, this disturbed sleep-wake cycle, the blue curve here is normal, and this is what our cortisol should be looking like if we're sleeping well. So if we're sleeping well, we've got cortisol in the morning, which helps us to kind of deal with stress throughout the day. So it does decrease as we go down through the day. By evening, it's really low. But if we're not sleeping, we don't have that during the day. So this is how we in animals develop this abnormal response to stress, and it results in adrenal fatigue and Cushing's disease. And
so there was one question, if feeding once daily, is there a better time of day? So how would that fit into that circadian rhythm, and where would you put that meal basically?
Well, as I was saying, a lot of dogs, as they age, they tend to not want breakfast as much. And so I think that I would try to put the meal at lunchtime, or maybe later in the afternoon after the dog has had some activity throughout the day. I think that's going to be the best time for them to eat. Okay. Not super late at night though, because that's going to disrupt the sleep. So sometime, I would say midday would probably be ideal. And just, this stuff works. So in a human study, in 8 weeks, with relaxation, breathing techniques, a plant-centered diet, 5 times a week exercise, minimum of 7 hours of sleep at night, they were actually able to turn back the clock in these men by over 3 years in 8 weeks.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. Okay, and here we have, walking and exercising through winter, why it's beneficial. So temperature regulation, it requires energy from our body to regulate our body temperature. And as we age, we lose brown fat. So many people have probably heard that, brown fat is better to have than white fat. So the reason is white fat secretes inflammatory hormones and accelerates aging. And we just don't like how it feels or looks too. And then brown fat actually consumes more energy than white fat to regulate our body temperature. So it actually keeps us slimmer. It's burning more calories the more brown fat we have, just to regulate our body temperature. And cold exposure reduces and reverses the brown fat deterioration. So cold exposure can actually, a term called browning, it can actually help turn the white fat that we accumulate into brown fat that's more helpful for us. So that's why people are so into cold plunges right now, but why everybody in the Northeast especially should definitely stay exercising during the winter and get out in the cold.
Mm.
We
So
in
that's
California,
like
we
for
can
the
do
fat.
cold plunges. Do what?
So that's like sunbathing for your fat. The cold
Yeah, it is.
plunges.
That's a good way. Yeah,
I gotta get my fat a little bit of a tan.
exactly. Yes, we're browning. Yes. And then conversely, heat exposure activates antioxidants and protein repair mechanisms, and degrades the faulty proteins. So helps with proteostasis. And this just reduces protein damage, and it actually increases growth hormone. So that helps us to preserve muscle, and it balances our cortisol. So it can help with that sleep wake cycle dysregulation that we can see with aging. So we can expose ourselves to heat, also expose ourselves to cold. Now, we don't want to do anything extreme with our pets. We don't want to cause heat exhaustion, of course, but we can be, a little bit hot sometimes. It's okay. It's okay to see your pet panting a little bit. We just want to watch for those signs of like, we don't want to push our pet into heat exhaustion. Mm. Okay, sex hormones. This is a really hot topic in veterinary medicine right now, I feel like. Spay neuter programs, like I think we need to start looking at individualized plans as opposed to like a general protocol for everybody. So we know that spaying and neutering is protective for mammary cancer, but leaving those genitals in place are going to provide hormones that actually protect against other forms of cancer like osteosarcoma, lymphosarcoma, and prostate cancer. In humans, that decline in like estrogen, especially once we get to post-reproductive age, it contributes to the development of chronic disease and accelerates aging. And, with those hormones, the hormones help to delay immune decline and neurodegenerative conditions and cardiovascular, and, delays muscle loss and bone density loss. And in dogs, the, spaying and neutering increases the risk of orthopedic, metabolic, and endocrine disease and several cancers. But leaving them, the longer we can leave them with exposure to the sex hormones, the longer we can delay that spay neuter, regardless of whether we end up spaying and neutering them. The longer we expose them, that is associated with reduced risk of general health problems and a longer health span. So not that we don't spay neuter, but there are other options like vasectomy and actually just taking out the uterus that might actually be helpful for a lot of animals. So just to sum it up, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So you should be a little bit hungry, be out of breath, be cold, and be hot. It's all good. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Now, what we do when we're already doing all of those things and our pets or ourselves, we're getting older and we're still, we still want to slow down the clock a little bit. So these are some compounds that we can take that can really help us to slow down our aging and in many cases reverse it. So NAD.
Before we head into that, I just wanted to point out that all the things that you've just mentioned are all lifestyle things that we already know, right? But now we just have that research to kind of back it up. And I know in one of the slides that you had in your presentation at the AHVMA, it said you've got to always go back in time if you want to move forward. So we have to go back in time and look at what have our ancestors done, how did we get to live this long, and how did we manage to thrive? So if we actually then apply what we used to know, right? Sleep, exercise, not eating too much and good foods, etc., then we can have healthier pets. And we know that. You guys already know that. It's just that some of the things are inconvenient. We don't like to go exercising. I mean, I'd much rather lay on my couch too and do nothing, right?
Right.
You just have to go back.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, and like looking at blue zones, Dan Buettner has, done a lot of data collection looking at the 5 blue zones around the globe. And many of your listeners might have seen that Blue Zones Netflix series. It's great. But one of the things that he talks about is just these people aren't doing anything exceptional. It's like you just have to go back to our roots. And we've done so many things with technological advances that are trying to engineer away having to expend energy. And so with our technological advances, we have kind of accelerated our own aging. It makes it easier for us for our day-to-day, but in the long term, it's not as good as how we used to do things. So yeah, go back to move forward. Exactly.
Because the thing is, before we head into supplements too, you cannot supplement yourself or your pets out of a poor diet. You can't out-supplement yourself or your pet out of arthritis by giving them a joint supplement. That just doesn't work. You still have to do the things to keep them as healthy as possible so that you don't end up with issues, down the road.
Yeah. You have to build your base. You have to build your base with all of the, environmental lifestyle factors. So you have to have that good foundation that's slowing down your aging and helping to reverse it before you can even talk about supplements. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. And so one of like the biggest, I feel like, supplements that has so much press around it is NAD, and for good reason. NAD is the molecule that is produced in and supplies energy for each cell. And our production of NAD decreases with age and with inflammation. Inflammation actually eats it up. And without NAD, we die. Our cells die within seconds of not having NAD. So NAD is like the key. And unfortunately, NAD, it's a molecule that can't be absorbed in the gut if we take it orally. So we can only take NAD as an IV infusion, which doesn't really work for many of us and our pets. It works if we can do it, but it's not feasible. And so the way we can get around that is we take the precursors or building blocks of NAD by mouth. And so, but we don't have to, just like we were talking about, it doesn't require a supplement to improve our NAD. We can also just exercise, practice intermittent fasting and, thermoregulating. That all increases NAD for us. But if we need that extra boost, we can take, an NAD precursor. So it has several functions, including restoration of muscle and maintaining cognitive function and improving mitochondrial function, decreasing inflammation, major, anti-aging functions here. And one product, leap years, contains an NAD precursor. It also contains a zombie killer, which we'll talk about in a second. So this is a great product. Also, Protandim. It does have a precursor, and it has shown increased lifespan in mice. The leap years underwent a study at NC State looking at in dogs. And so they know that it improves cognition and engagement, and just, you can just see your dogs moving a little bit better. I've been using this for quite some time in my practice, and I see great things with it. So really recommend that. Another thing is resveratrol. And if you look here at the picture, the diagram here, the major diseases that resveratrol is effective against are where have we seen those before, right? These are the main diseases that, contribute to morbidity and mortality in humans and in dogs. So this is a great compound. This is it's found in red grapes, but of course we know that would not be good to be giving to our animals. So for animal supplements, we source it from Japanese knotweed. There's a product, Resvantage Canine. It has a very low dose, so it's unknown if this is going to really reap huge benefits, but we know that resveratrol kind of works synergistically to help NAD. So any little bit is going to help. And we know that resveratrol is very, very safe. It's got a great safety profile. Another supplement is quercetin. And people might already be giving this to themselves and to their animals, but it's just cool to see how quercetin actually works for anti-aging. So it's actually found in onions. Again, this would be a bad source for it for our animals. It's very toxic. But it's also found in bilberries and black currants. And this actually increases NAD, and it also has a senolytic effect of killing zombie cells. So this modulates the gut microbiota, Odette, and increases short chain fatty acids. So it really improves the GI health in dogs. These, profound anti-inflammatory effects, but it's also kind of termed nature's antihistamine. So it can be really helpful for allergy conditions. It also has anti-cancer and anti-diabetic properties. Rapamycin, this is something that would have to be prescribed by your vet. It's very limited right now to cancer patients. It's not FDA approved, but it's something you can't get it over the counter. So this is actually a antibiotic and antifungal that was found in the soil on Easter Island. And it's been, since it was discovered, it's just been, kind of a miraculous drug. They've used it for a lot of things in human medicine, but it interferes with inflammaging, which is that aging of the immune system. And it decreases those inflammatory secretions that zombie cells are spewing out. So that's how it helps for aging. Also increases lifespan in mice, and it does have a good safety profile in dogs, but again, we kind of have to wait until we have more research. A dog aging project is doing a lot of research on this, so hopefully we'll have better capacity to use it for Healthspan purposes in veterinary medicine soon.
So since it's an antifungal or an antimicrobial, how does it affect the microbiome then? Have they done any studies on that at all? Because you don't want to have better, less inflammation, but then killing the microbes at the same time. So yes.
I'm not sure rapamycin affects the, I'm not sure how it affects the microbiome, but I know that it's going to be pulsed dosing. Dogs don't take it every day when they do get it prescribed. It's going to be like, every, I think it's like 3 days a week that they would take it, very low dose, and they only pulse it. So I'm not sure if it's going to have detrimental effects on the microbiome, but that's part of why Dog Aging Project really has to research it further to see, what kind of things we might expect with that. Yeah. Okay, metformin. This is an anti-diabetic drug. It's used a lot in humans. We don't use it much in dogs yet, but it does have anti-cancer effects in dog cancer cells, and it has good safety in dogs from a couple of trials that we've seen. It works by, again, just like rapamycin does, it diminishes the inflammatory secretions of zombie cells. And it targets 11 out of the 12 hallmarks of aging. So this is a drug that really has, some profound potential benefits against aging. But in dog studies, it's really had kind of a lackluster performance in promoting longevity. So again, we're going to have a lot more dog research into this drug, but it can extend lifespan in mice, but only when it's given with rapamycin. There seems to be some kind of, synergistic effect. Fisetin. Okay, so this is a really powerful zombie killer, and this is a flavanol that's found in strawberries. So fisetin does have a good safety profile in dogs. It acts as an antioxidant and an anti-inflammatory that gets incorporated into the cell membrane of each cell. And lots of human clinical trials underway right now, especially at Mayo Clinic, for especially frailty. They're looking at frailty and other conditions known to occur with aging in humans, including kidney dysfunction. So there could be a lot of great, potential indications for its use in veterinary medicine. And we just want to watch that patients that are on blood thinners, we probably don't want to use this with those dogs. But fisetin, based on the human research, it's great when used only 2 days out of the month. So every month you just pulse it for 2 days. Yeah. Interesting. Mm-hmm. Wipe out those zombies. So curcumin, this is another great supplement that probably a lot of people have heard of, and maybe a lot of pets are already on. So this decreases glucose levels, decreases inflammation, decreases dementia, increases lifespan in male mice, and it can positively affect the microflora of the intestines, and it improves mitochondrial function and renewal. And then this is, has the effect against the zombie cells to, again, decrease the inflammatory secretions that they're spitting out. Berberine. Okay, so many people may have heard of this recently because there's there's this craze about Ozempic right now. And could berberine be nature's Ozempic? Because it does have, similar properties to Ozempic. So this is found in Chinese gold thread, and it does trigger cell repair, and this can prevent zombie cell formation. So that's how it can really help with aging. And it also regulates glucose and metabolism, so it's helpful for weight loss. That's how it's similar to Ozempic. Vets have been using it for a long time already. In Chinese medicine, it's contained in several herbs that as an anti-diarrheal and for anti-cancer. But we don't usually use it long term. Again, this is something that we would just pulse for maybe a few weeks and then go off of. So yeah, but this is a great product. It's great for mitochondrial function. And then melatonin. So this is kind of one of my favorite supplements, especially for my older pets, because a lot of the one complaint that pet owners will have is that they're not sleeping as well at night. And so this is a hormone that the brain makes at night to help you go to sleep, and it plays a critical role in just maintaining your circadian function and regulating that sleep-wake cycle. And this is a really cool compound because it can activate or inhibit inflammation and immune responses. It also decreases the growth pathway, and it can prevent zombie cell formation, and it's very important for energy metabolism. So we can give this to our dogs and cats about 30 minutes before bedtime, and it can help them to sleep, but it's also acting, as potential support for inflammation and our immune system.
Do you ever see that with melatonin that they're a little more, I don't know, sedated the next day with dogs and cats?
It's typically with higher doses. So and this is known in human medicine as well, with higher dosages is when you get that kind of like groggy feeling in the morning. So I always try to do the lowest dose that's effective. So I would start, like with dogs, I would start with like the 1 milligram dosage. And for tiny dogs, I even go lower than that. And same thing with cats. You start with like the lowest dose, and then every couple nights, if you're noticing maybe a little bit of improvement and they're not groggy in the morning, then you might want to take it up a little bit for the next night, and just see what their perfect dose is. Yeah.
Good, because I get a hangover from melatonin.
Yeah.
Really bad.
Myself, I get a hangover if I take more than 2 milligrams. So I take about 1 milligram. I take very low. So Loyal is the company that I was mentioning before that's making the, if you look down at the left, LOY-001 is their first compound. And they're trying to get FDA approval for it. This is an injectable that is going to be given every 3 to 6 months for our large and giant breeds. And this is the molecule that's going to target that IGF-1 gene variant that we talked about. So this one is not quite in clinical trials yet, but you can go on their website and sign up if you want to be on their list to get notified when it enters trials. The 002 at the top right, we don't know exactly what molecule it is. It's something new, but it is designed to target metabolic fitness in smaller, any breed, any size breed. So down to about 13 pounds, I think they said. And so this is actually just launched into clinical trials. So you can definitely, sign up if you wanted to look at their clinical trial sites and see if one is near you that you could enroll your dog in if you wanted to. Cool. These are just some companies that are actively doing anti-aging research in dogs, some that you might want to, keep tabs on if you're interested. Animal Bioscience, this is David Sinclair's company, and they have produced leap years. Loyal, which we were just talking about, they've got the 2 products that they're trying to, well, they've got more products than that, but the 2 that are, going through the FDA pipeline right now. And then Dog Aging Project, the largest database. It's just awesome. And you can actually sign your dog up to be part of the database at any age. Cornell has a longevity research program, and then Rejuvenate Bio. This is another PhD who's really well-known in anti-aging research and trying to design some drugs for dogs.
Wow.
So, do you have any? And I was like, but hopefully it wasn't too sciencey, and hopefully understandable, and hopefully you're feeling inspired to incorporate some of these lifestyle changes if you haven't already.
Yeah, I think a lot of people here who are listening probably already have, but
yeah,
it never hurts to hear them again, because as we were talking earlier, I said to you that I really need to get one of these treadmills that you can work at your desk at, to get my 5 minutes every hour, because I don't move enough. So yeah, no, thank you so much for breaking it down that way. It was, I really enjoyed it. I understood it better than when you did the
oh, cool.
It was so much about, like biochemical compounds that the body makes. So it was much more complex, obviously. So this was really interesting. And I really do hope that everybody enjoyed it. Well, my sister says very interesting, and Michelle, Frank, this information is phenomenal for our pets and ourselves. Thank you
Awesome.
so much. So definitely
Great.
others are saying great information. Thank you. So I think they really did enjoy that. So there's
Awesome.
Nick Sinclair. So I don't know if he's really.
Nick Sinclair. Oh, leap years.
Oh,
Yay.
it is him. Well, thank you for tuning in and such. I mean, that's so amazing that you're here, and
It
yeah, thank
is.
you for
Thank
supporting
you.
our anti-aging vet here, Heather. So that's awesome, and I guess you got a thumbs up from him. So it means that you
Oh,
probably did
yay.
okay.
Well, 2 thumbs up for leap years.
Yeah. Thank you for doing all the research that you're doing, Nick. It's really amazing. Thank you, and obviously thank
Mhm.
you, Heather, for sharing all of that with us. There was one question about hormones. Let me just find that question here. Is there anything that can be done for a dog who has been neutered early?
Mm. Well, I mean, we just we can't replace those hormones back. So we basically just have to do our best with the lifestyle factors. Just try to keep them on the best food, the exercise, all of the other lifestyle factors. And, just really looking at, because I think one of the biggest things that our hormone dysregulation causes is the cortisol dysregulation. And so there are some other herbals that we can try to help with cortisol regulation. Ashwagandha is one that can really help with cortisol. So I would suggest if you're a pet owner, hopefully you have a integrative vet in your vicinity, and you can talk to them about potentially Chinese and Western herbals to help support your dog's hormonal status.
Yeah, and then what I like to use too is glandulars.
Yeah.
A little bit of testicles or extra, ovaries in them. So those can be really good. And I think making elevating dopamine levels, so stimulating that can also be very helpful. And exercise was a wonderful thing to increase
Yeah.
dopamine, snefaris, and that. And if you want more information on that, Dr. Karen Becker did a wonderful um, session on that in Inside Scoop. So you can also head over there and rewatch that. But yeah, there's a lot that can be done, and certainly making sure that you institute all of the things, the lifestyle things that we talked about, because
Mhm.
joints can be very affected as well from elevated luteinizing hormone when they're spayed and neutered, and so doing all these fitness things to maintain muscle mass, to maintain the stability of the joints. So
Mhm.
all of these things can help. So it's not just a one size, or yeah, one thing to help counteract the lack of hormones. It's just multiple things to help support the body.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that was one of the questions. The only other question that I saw. Um, Yeah, so thank you so much for that. I really
You're
appreciate
welcome.
the information. I guess one question I have, there's a lot of controversy as far as, what kind of diet. Should it be more plant-based? Should it be more animal-based? And it's like everybody has an opinion about it. And
Hmm.
I
I
know it's
know.
in humans than it is for carnivores, obviously. But if you have anything there, because they're like the prey model only, you cannot feed any kind of fiber
Right.
whatsoever, and then the others are going the other way where it's like all vegan and you shouldn't feed them any meat at all. So
Yeah.
you have a
Um, I think, as with everything else in my life, I like moderation. I don't like to swing too far to either side. And I think, again, we just have to go back to be able to move forward, right? Like, what have our animals had ancestrally? Like, they have had, like, whole prey model, right? Which, when they're eating a gut of a animal, they're they're getting some fiber. They're not going to be excluding fiber naturally. So I think that, as long as you're not feeding one of these ultra processed foods day in and day out, you're giving your pet some variety but a variety of balanced diets that are good quality. And if it's cost prohibitive to feed a large or giant breed dog, like something that's really high quality every single day, then at least just supplementing the food that you're able to give the dog with something that's of better quality. And just creating a variety within that, just so that the dog's microbiome can benefit. But what I tell my clients is, quality can cost a lot. And we see this with human health too. When you don't have a lot of money, sometimes you find that you just end up on a more processed diet. So there's only so much we can do if it's cost prohibitive, but quantity costs nothing to affect that. So we can at least fast. But for my dog personally, she eats a variety of cooked food. I never feed her highly processed commercial foods, but she's on all balanced foods, and she rotates through about 10 different varieties in a week. I mean, she's got a robust diet, and it's there's some whole prey in there, there's protein in there, there's some grains in there, and we just go through a variety, just like in human medicine, in human health. I think if we were on the same diet every single day, even if it were great quality, we would be experiencing some health issues before too long. So the same thing is going to happen with our dogs. I think there's not enough research out there yet for recommending like vegan diets yet for dogs, which are omnivores, and especially cats, which are obligate carnivores. So I think I'm a little bit leery of that. But then there's some research that shows in a beagle colony, they did restrict protein, and they did find cognitive benefits. So there's just, it's a little bit unknown right now. I think.
And I think
recommend one thing.
Yeah, and the problem with a lot of the diets that they try, or diet studies, they're usually not long enough. I find, I mean, especially when I looked at microbiome research and feeding studies, they were not long enough. They were with a small number of dogs or animals, if it was cats. So it wasn't really that, it wasn't really providing that great of an information. Plus, it depends also what they feed. I mean, if they feed like a crap diet, right? And then, I mean, in any case, I mean, my philosophy is always look back to nature. What would they eat in the wild? What's, where do they live? Where do they come from? Because there are seasonal changes. There are all kinds of changes that are happening constantly. And, they walk through one terrain and they find somebody's compost pile, and then they go somewhere else and they find a mouse, or, so it's like, just watch, kind of look back to what nature would do. And that's what I do with my own diet too, is I try to mimic nature, because nature knew how to build this incredible machine of a body and make it to last, so we shouldn't try to interfere too much with that, because usually when humans start to interfere with nature, things kind of go downhill. So if we can go back to nature and mimic that as much as possible, and that's not just diet, but lifestyle as well, I think we have the best chance at being healthy.
Yeah, exactly. We just do so many things for convenience and, like convenient breakfast or whatever, but there were no Pop-Tart trees in any forest that I've ever seen.
Yeah, that would be more of the Willy Wonka chocolate factory sort of scenario, right?
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so, so much, Heather. I really appreciate you taking the time because I know you prepared quite a bit for this lecture as well. And you're just amazing. You're just such a bright light as well, and you're funny. So
Oh, that's
thank
so
you so
sweet,
much for
Odette. No,
being
this
here.
is my pleasure and it's my passion. And thank you
Mhm.
so much for inviting me to do this. This is really a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for listening in and for doing all the amazing things that you're doing for your animals and for all the learning and the questioning and the critical thinking that you're all doing. It's really beautiful to see and it's necessary in this world. So keep doing what you're doing and sending you lots of love and a big hug and have a wonderful rest of your Sunday. All right, bye everyone.
Thank you.